Sometimes in reading the gospel, I get led down a path that some might call a side street. I get interested in part of the passage that's just one line or two. A couple of weeks ago, for example, we heard about Jesus calling his disciples. And two of them, James and John, are described as the sons of Zebedee. As Father Caruso reminded us, when they followed Jesus, they also left Zebedee there at the fishing boat. And I began to wonder, whatever happened to Zebedee? I mean, we hear a lot about James and John later in the gospel account, but we never hear anything more about Zebedee. In the same way today, we hear about Simon's mother-in-law. Now first, let me note, for all of those champions of clerical celibacy, if Simon had a mother-in-law, we all know what else he had, right? But aside from that, we don't know anything about Simon's mother-in-law, except that she was sick, she was healed, and she began to serve Jesus, the one who had healed her. So I began to wonder, what might her story be? And as I searched around for material on that and for this homily, I ran across a story that was just so good, I wanted to share it with you as is. So here it is as I found it on the good old internet. Now Simon's mother was in bed with a fever, and they told him about her at once. Well, there I am. You people have a saying about everyone having their 15 minutes of fame. This is mine. Right there in the gospel written by that boy Mark. He doesn't tell you my name, of course, or my daughter's name either, but it was my girl that was married to that big fisherman, Simon, he was called, when we first knew him. My husband Jesse and Simon's father made the deal. In those days, we believed that parents knew what was best for their children. Jesse was worried about his health. He wanted to have our Rachel settled before he died. Oh, he had a few qualms about Simon. He's a good boy, but so impetuous. Jesse said to me, I only hope that he'll grow up a little more and learn to think before he speaks. But I hushed him. Your trouble is that you wouldn't think anyone was good enough for your little girl. There's nothing to worry about. We've known Simon since he was a child. He comes from a good family. He'll be a good provider, and he'll be good to our Rachel. You'll see. And he was. He even took me into his home after we lost Jesse. But of course, that was before he took up with that man Jesus. I couldn't imagine what had gotten into him. He just went off and left his fishing boats on the shore, and so did his brother Andrew and their friends James and John. I didn't understand it. Simon was a fisherman, like his father, like his father's father. The men in that family were all fishermen. And now here he was, following around after some kind of a street preacher. He wasn't himself, Simon wasn't. Something or someone had changed him. And oh, he was full of enthusiasm for this Jesus and the things he taught. Well, that was all very well, I thought, but where did the man think his livelihood was coming from? And then, too, I didn't think the Romans, who were occupying our land, would be too pleased with some of what this man Jesus was saying. For that matter, neither were some of our Jewish leaders. I didn't know what this might all lead to. And then came that day, the one you had the reading about today. I was sick in bed with a fever. I felt miserable. First I'd be burning up, and then I'd have the chills, and I ached all over. And now here were all these men coming into the house, and only Rachel to serve them. I wanted to get up and help her, but I was just too sick. And then it happened. They had told him about me. He came to my bedside at once. He took my hand. He looked into my eyes. Oh, those eyes. It was like he was looking deep into my soul. I felt that he could see all the thoughts and feelings that I had kept carefully hidden for my whole life. In that instant, he knew things about me that I had never told anyone. Not my parents, not my children, not even my husband. Some things just weren't to be spoken, but I didn't have to speak them to him. He saw the frustrations I had experienced. He knew of my love for my children and how I could never seem to stop worrying about them. He saw how I still grieved. He even saw that I wasn't very happy about my son-in-law, Simon, leaving his fishing boats and running off after him. In that moment, he knew me through and through. And it felt good. When he took my hand and looked into my eyes, I knew that there was someone who understood, that he knew everything there was to know about me, and he loved me, and it was all right. He took my hand, he smiled, he lifted me up. I forgot about my fever. I forgot about my aches and pains. I forgot that I was worried about Simon. I just wanted to do something for this man who had touched me in a way that no one had touched me before. I had to make some kind of a response to his love. So I did what I best knew how to do. I got up and I served him. Yes, and his friends too. I know you have heard that my son-in-law, Simon, Peter Jesus called him, and his brother Andrew and James and John and their other friends were called disciples of Jesus. Well, let me tell you something. They weren't the only ones. From that day, I was his disciple too. There were a lot of us, women whose lives he had touched. Some were healed of sickness like me. All of us experienced his understanding, his overwhelming love. Most of us aren't mentioned by name, but that doesn't matter. He had transformed our lives, and we wanted only to give back to him, to serve him in whatever way we could. Peter and the rest played their part, and yes, that boy really did need to learn to think before he spoke. But he had a good heart. Yes, as I say, he played his part, and so did Andrew and James and John and the rest. But so did we. In that story of Peter's mother-in-law, she finds and she reminds us that we're all disciples, one way or another. Perhaps not in the big, public, historical way that Peter or Paul were, but each of us in our own way. Some of us will end up serving God in ways that will create headlines. Others of us will serve God quietly by being at Pads on Monday night to sit with our guests and get one of them a cup of coffee in the middle of the night. Maybe your way is to teach in the church school, or to read a lesson, or to be a member of the community at prayer. In his letter to the church at Corinth, Paul tells them that he has become all things to all people so that he can effectively communicate the gospel message. Now, I have a small suspicion that all along he was really being Paul and expecting his listeners to understand him in different ways. But the point he makes is important, that he wants to meet each person on familiar ground for the sake of the gospel. The point I think he's driving at is that he'll do any task needed so long as it is for the greater glory of God and the spread of the gospel. Just as with Paul, we all will find a way to show the world what we mean by being a community of the gospel of Christ. The question is what actions we'll use and what that will say about our understanding of the gospel. I have one more story to share with you. Once there was a senior warden in a small parish. When his term ended, he announced that he was going to become a member of the altar guild. He was already a member of the church choir and served as a lector, and he said he wanted to do something that was as important as reading a lesson or singing hymns and anthems. Much to his own surprise, as well as the surprise of others, he had decided that the altar guild provided that opportunity. You see, he said at the annual meeting, as senior warden, God gave me the opportunity to witness the importance of all of our work. And he became the first ever male member of the altar guild in that parish. And as things like this go, he eventually became the director of the altar guild. He had discovered that it was not at all about what one does up front, but also what one does behind the scenes. And this was a blessing for him and for that parish. My prayer today is this. May God give us all the wisdom and the humility to find our own place of service. So like Peter's mother-in-law, we can say that in our own way, we too are disciples of Jesus.